So we're reading Ultimate Journeys by Robert Monroe. We are on chapter 6, page number 71 of the book and page number
42
of the PDF. Okay.
Chapter 6, Inside and Outside. So, where is the missing basic and what is the new direction? Both seem well hidden. Perhaps it would help in the search if we first find out and pin down what we really are.
So what does this mean? In the last chapter, we found that, okay, we are human beings, but our intent is to find the light, to go outside, to figure out what we actually are. And that's what all spirituality is all about, really, to find out what we are. But to know what where we are going, we need to know where we are and what we are. So that's what the game is all about.
As human minds, we are what we think. We also are what others think. Most of this has little to do with our physical bodies when we go below the surface. To deal with this more closely, let us create a model of the human mind as it is and operates in practice. A pragmatic model, if you like. Imagine it as structured in layers, something like an onion, and let us work from in to out.
Okay, so what does this imply, right? We want to dissect and actually come to the place from where we are truly operating.
Core self. This is the intrinsic original human mind. Starting from this inner core, we are the essence of the sum of our experiences, without limitation. The inner core is composed of the following.
So again, we come from somewhere, but most of all, we are a sum total of our experiences, because all our perceptions are actually screened by our experiences.
What we have lived and consciously thought to date, the emotions we have experienced, the love we have expressed and experienced, the dreams we have experienced, whether we remember them or not, the pains and pleasures, the daydreams, wishes and hopes, all of the above during our non-physical activity, sleep, etc. All the above during any and all previous life activity, unidentified elements.
So again, all kinds of experiences that we have, they leave an impression on us, right? And this is something that we've been seeing from the human biofield tuning that we do, that anything that we experience is available to us on the biofield, whether it's a loving interaction, whether it's a dangerous interaction, or it's a disharmonic kind of an interaction, it's a trauma, it's a good experience. Everything gets recorded in our biofield, and we are a sum total of our experiences, right? If you've had a bad experience somewhere, then when we are going into that experience or a similar experience, a similar reaction starts taking place in our body system. We are constantly equating things. Like if this happened this time, then this will happen again over here. And then we get into the flight and fight response and all that stuff starts to happen, right? So we are a sum total of all our experiences.
Animal sub-self. This is the layer or element that is most difficult to control. All of the expressions of the human mind route through here and receive data in the Earth life system through here as well.
Okay, so this is like the reptilian brain. Okay, the brain has various levels. The reptilian brain is totally tuned into survival. So over here, what we are talking about is the total survival mechanism. Over here, higher thinking does not take place. That is why it is animalistic in nature, and it is the most difficult thing to control.
This is where the filtering, discoloration, and contamination take place. The problem is that we think we need to rely on it or we cannot remain physically human. Physiologically, It comprises a cluster consisting of the mammalian brain, the reptilian brain, and the limbic system. Its signals taint almost every facet of human life. Almost, but not all.
Right. So again, survival mechanism, looking after oneself, creating security, okay, reproduction. These are factors which are controlled by the reptilian and the mammalian brain, basically.
Conscious mind. The next layer can be identified as what you think you are, which is entirely different from knowing what you are.
So this is important, right? We are constantly creating an image of ourselves. Also in the first paragraph, they talked about what others think that we are, right? Now over here, I may think I'm someone, but I may be someone totally different. How do others perceive us? What is our true self, right? This is the game that we are playing, getting to know ourselves.
The reason is that only a part of the inner core is available to the conscious you. Hence, there is much distortion as expression has to pass through the animal sub-self. The conscious mind may be wholly accurate, but in some areas, local concepts and customs give an opposite interpretation from that of your core self.
So again, genetics and epigenetics, right? You have a core self, but it is tempered by your environment. So depending on your environment, that is going to change the way that your core self actually operates. Right over here, it also says the reason is that only a part of your inner core self is available to the conscious mind. So that when you look at brainwave patterns, which is something that we are doing in the Monroe processes, the conscious mind is basically the when the brain is functioning in the beta frequencies. But the core of yourself, 95% of yourself is more available in the delta and the theta states of consciousness when we have access to those frequencies in our in the brainwave pattern. Right. So we really have very little awareness of who we truly are.
Although much of this layer is deliberately hidden from others, a considerable part is expressed in our outer self. Because it is so strong, we have no choice in this. This layer is further complicated by belief systems. For many of us, the complexity becomes a maze. It is no surprise that most don't find a clear way out.
So again, our belief systems, right? What may be right in one culture may be totally wrong in another culture. So if all our actions, our interactions are tainted by our belief systems. Just 1 second, please.
Human mind external.
Can you just read this again, although much of the layer?
Although much of this layer is deliberately hidden from others, a considerable part is expressed in our outer self. Because it is so strong, we have no choice in this. This layer is further complicated by belief systems. For many of us, the complexity becomes a maze. It is no surprise that most don't find a clear way out.
So this is the lower self, right, which is expressed in the outer self. And the conscious mind really has no control over this inner self, the expression. And our belief systems will actually create it will taint the way that we are operating. Okay.
Human mind external. The next outward layer is what we think, others think of us. This is a grand mixture because part of it is intuitive, non-verbal communication, which gets confused with what our sensory and analytical perceptions tell us. This layer is in a constant state of flux, changing constantly with new experience and new perception.
So again, we are also concerned with what others think of us. And this perception is basically non-verbal, right? Facial expressions, the way that the body language, how is the tone of the voice, right? All these are non-verbal expression, which again taints the way that we are operating. And this is constantly in flux because the environment is constantly in flux all the time.
In this section, which is controlled heavily by cultural context, we develop artificial and synthetic drives and motivations which probably lead to most mental and physical dysfunction. Attempting to keep up or leading a totally reactive existence, which is what many people do, can, if you allow this lifestyle to take over, lead to a veritable hell on earth.
So again, following the Jones, you're not being yourself. You're attempting to be someone else because that is what you perceive that the world or the environment around you wants. And that creates hell within us. Okay, so again, when we operate from the core self, then we are ourselves. But when we attempt to create a facade, when we are attempting to follow the Jones or be like everyone else around us, we are creating a problem for ourselves.
Human mind role. Moving outward, you have the skin. What you want others to think of you. This is usually fairly simple. Mostly, it is set by the acceptability and needs of the world around you, superimposed hopefully with waves and pulses thrusting out from your inner core. The presentation of self is careful and usually covered with a sheen of deception. In hard cases, no sign of the inner layers even appears, even under great stress. Such cases die with their false faces on, grimly and stoically.
So what does this mean, right? We are so concerned with how we are looking, right? We are attempting to look good all the time that our true selves never actually come out. And it can become very painful when we are attempting to be someone that we are not. Okay. And this is very important because when we create a facade and we are operating out with a mask around ourselves, it becomes difficult to live. Suppose you are told to go on a stage and just be yourself, do whatever you want to do, you won't have a problem. But if you're given a role of a character and then you're meant to play that character, it becomes difficult. So what he's saying here clearly is most of us are playing roles. We are not being ourselves.
Human mind radiation. The outermost layer, much larger than you might expect, is composed of others' thoughts of you. Consider yourself as existing wherever and whenever any other person or being thinks of you, even only occasionally. You may get some idea of the magnitude by recalling all of those you think of, even only occasionally. Add, as just a belief at this point, all of those who still think of you, but who no longer inhabit a physical body, who are now somewhere else, plus those who know you from any other existence, whatever and wherever it may be or have been. You would be astounded at how big and how much you are.
So this is something that we actually experience in the Lifeline program, that as soon as you even think of a person, you are either in front of that person or that person is in front of you. Now, what he's trying to say here clearly is that whenever you think of a person, the resonance of that person is in you, right? And it is affecting you. So we have to be very clear in our minds as to who are we thinking about. Now, most of the time you will be thinking about people who you don't like, right? And what do you ultimately end up being? You start being and behaving like those people because there's a resonance of that person's character, in your field. And then that starts to get embedded, right? So now, if I'm thinking of someone, that person is in front of me. So we can be in multiple places at the same time. It's all a matter of resonance and frequencies.
Very little of this radiation of you as perceived by others is aware of the content of your inner core self. The disguise and filtration are in the way. But a problem does lie in our deep concern as to what others think of us.
So because we are constantly thinking of what others think of us, we cannot be our true self. So we are constantly operating with a facade.
So much for this model of the human mind. Now, it might seem that we can sharpen our different overview greatly if we focus solely on the signs of the core self as they make their way through the many layers of what we are. But we have to beware of imitations. There are those dedicated to the Earth life system who can produce a mass of simulated core self so cleverly done that it conceals the real Earth life system action and motivation. It is easy to be deceived.
So again, what he's saying is that basically what our deal over here is to get to our core self, get to know ourselves, right? But people get stuck in this earth life existence, they get addicted to it. And because of that, they start creating a stimulation which does not allow us to go into our core self. That's why you'll find that most spiritual, highly spiritual personalities had a difficult life because they constantly had to fight. They had to change the belief system of people so that they could get to their core self.
It may help to accept as a belief to be converted into a known that we, as human mind consciousness, have both an individual and a species purpose or purposes for being in the earth life system, which is not usually an understood part of our physical waking awareness. Conflict arises when the human mind demands an action and the earth life system self has trouble handling it. There is a growing suspicion that much of our mental and physical dysfunction is the result of this conflict. The least of the conflict is external. Most lies in the habituation and motivation struggle within the human mind.
So this is something that we've been constantly talking about in awareness of getting into the flow, right? When does conflict arise? When you want to do something, but the universal consciousness wants something else. That is when conflict arises. And this is exactly what he's saying is very clearly conflict arises when the human mind demands an action and the earth life system has trouble, earth life system self has trouble handling it, right? So what we are really need to do, what is our life purpose? If we are shifting out of that, then that is when the conflicts start to arise. So knowing our life purpose, knowing our core self, what are we here for? When we get into the flow, we connect with our core and then conflict definitely seems to drop.
Now, here are a few of the common signs of the core self that may emerge through the layers. These are strictly non-earth life system and non-animal and are not listed in order of importance. Emotion. Any expression of emotion, sadness, joy, anger, grief, ecstasy, hate, exaltation, depression, and so on, all subjective and spontaneous. The key is to experience and subsequently to learn to control and direct them as desired.
So again, we come back to our resilience grid, right? Where are we operating from? Which emotion is taking us where, right? Becomes very, very important. The moment we become aware of the emotions and can direct them, that is when we can control them. But if they just happen on their own and we have no conscious awareness of them, they're happening as a reaction rather than a response, then we can start to lose it.
In the Earth life system, there is no emotion beyond survival responses, such as protection of young, Responses which are purely aggressive or defensive in motivation. The nearest stimulations include possessiveness, dominance, jealousy, pride, etc.
So again, survival, right? When we are in survival, we are on the left side of the grid. And if you see all the emotions that are put here, including possessiveness, dominance, jealousy, and pride, all operate from the left side of the grid, right? So basically, survival is the core emotion that all of us are born with. Survival of self and survival of offspring, right? Procreation. We want the species to survive. That is the primal drive that we have. And we actually need to circumvent that drive. We need to transcend that drive. Only then can we actually touch our core self.
Empathy, appreciation, and even understanding without necessarily having any related personal memory or experience to draw upon. Empathy is a recognition of oneness beyond physical species. It is also a reflection of the knowledge that such experience is essential to the individual's learning process. Therefore, nothing can or should be done to attempt to change the problems others must face. Sympathy and compassion are specific versions that are colored by emotion to various degrees.
So again, very clearly he says, it is also a reflection of the knowledge that such experiences are essential to the individual's learning process. So why are we here in this Earth life system? We are here to learn things. We are here to experience things, right? And therefore, nothing can or should be done to attempt to change the problems one must face. Yes, you can support a person in the problem that one is facing, and especially for our children, but we must allow them to face their challenges. That is how they learn. That is how they grow, right? Now, if we start interfering in that, we start landing up creating a problem.
The Earth's life system has no knowledge or understanding of this area. The closest approximation may be herd or pack instinct, which is strictly survival based. It is possible that current dolphin investigations may have some relevance here.
So again, empathy is something that we need to have, right? But it does not happen normally. It doesn't happen so easily. Appreciation, that is what we are talking about in the grid all the time, that we need to shift from the left to right. And one of the best ways to do it is to get into appreciation. When we do that, we get out of our survival mode, right? We get out of the depleting field that we are living in and start coming into an uplifting field.
Soft smile, a direct information flow from the core self level. It is a form of what can be called non-verbal communication, multiple and total simultaneous transmission, reception that cannot be expressed in words. The facial expression is an autonomic response. Got it? Loud and clear.
So an autonomic response, right? You are not consciously making that response. That response is automatic. And as we discussed earlier, non-verbal communication is 95% of communication. So a soft smile can express a lot, right? Just our facial expressions can tell us a lot about how the other is thinking or, either getting it or not getting it.
The Earth life system has nothing comparable. The closest may be relationships developed between human minds and pet animals, a hand lick or a purr, but simulations are all over the place.
So again, these expressions are there all over the place, but we need to start becoming aware of them.
Big grin, another thrust direct from the core self. This radiation cannot be translated into words or graphics. Joy and fun are too mundane. There are many imitations, and because it is so disarming, the indicator is widely used to manipulate. Go past the indicator to the radiation itself.
So again, a person is grinning, or there are other facial expressions. But when we start looking deeper, right, someone may be smiling, but is really in a mess inside. So how do we get that, right? That is when intuition starts to come in. We have to intuitively be able to understand what the person is saying, rather than just seeing what the expression and the facial expression is.
Again, there is nothing comparable in the Earth's life system. In this framework, anything similar is a warning or prelude to predation.
So again, someone may be using these facial expressions to actually manipulate you, which always, or many times, it can be happening.
Beauty beholding. This is clean core self. It is pure appreciation of the inspiration and creativity of not only Earth life system constructs, but also of human mind patterns, from soaring bridges and buildings to a cappella choirs and human mind performance. It is an information experience gathering process that your human mind cannot resist. The Earth life system has no comprehension of this and nothing comparable, so there can be no imitations.
So again, the experience of beauty, the experience of natural beauty, the creation of various things, right? These are all downloads. Most of the time, people don't know where that inspiration actually comes from, but it does come.
Nostalgia. This is a welling up from your core self of origin memory, which is best rationalized as emotional values from previous experience in your present lifetime. In this way, it is possible to divert away from the underlying and implied plea, show me the way to go home.
So again, we are constantly reminded of our previous experiences, but all those experiences are actually guided towards only one thing, that is to find our core self, to find where we are actually coming from.
The Earth life system has no comprehension or comparable pattern that is not system based. The closest are migrating birds and salmon, but their motivations are practical system patterns.
So again, salmon and birds, they always go back to where they came from. Like the salmon go back to where they were born to lay eggs. Birds are constantly migrating to find where they came from, right? So they're migrating from one place to the other and they follow the same route. So like that, nostalgia is actually remembering where we came from.
A gentle touch, a very simple core self-expression, a touch instead of a grasp, a pat instead of a punch, a stroke instead of a shove. Even animals understand and know the difference.
So again, how are we touching someone? What is the intent behind that, right? Where are we operating from? The left or the right side, right? Will determine what that action is all about.
In the Earth life system, animals do learn a crude version, but all they can do is lick or rub, which may be enough. Anonymous giving, a true demonstration of the core self in action. Altruism and agape are working illustrations. Service to others with absolutely no recompense or recognition except to your human mind core. In the Earth life system, this is totally beyond comprehension. If it happens, it's by accident, not design.
So whenever anyone does charity, they want their name on the board, right? So you'll go to temples and you'll see placards put there that this was donated by this person, this was donated by that person. But the higher self is really not concerned with that, because that deals with ego, it deals with pride, which is again on the left side of the grid. The higher self will just want to give for the sake of giving, right? It's not going to want the name of anything. But most of us, because we are living in a materialistic world, we want our name to be there. Name and fame is very important to us, which is again something that we need to transcend.
Thinking. Human minds are thinkers to a degree not found elsewhere in the Earth life system. Once we get past the laws of the system, we discover a flow of ideas, inspiration, intuition, invention, innovation, all sorted through for us by our magnificent processor, the mind. These are products of core self-directives and are often sparked by curiosity, a great catalyst for change.
So we think, right, that we are getting an idea, but where does that idea actually come from? These are all downloads, right? Or they're coming from the core self, they're coming from the deeper, the big guy, not from the small guy. We are only operating with the small guy. So we need to be aware that where did the idea come from? And the stiller that we become, this is the premise of all meditative practices, to stop the mind from thinking. We are constantly thinking all the time like broken record player. When that stillness starts to come in, that is when we connect with the flow, we connect with the downloads, right? And then we get ideas to do various things. Of course, when we are going into higher states of consciousness, especially in exploration 27, we actually find that ideas are thrown out into the world in various places at the same time. That is why you will find that many times, many people around the world, around the globe, are working on the same idea simultaneously, because they're tuned into that frequency and the download comes with the idea.
There is nothing remotely close in the Earth life system. All we find is some rudimentary tool making, some instinctive processes that are usually attributed to keen physical sensory perception. Some animals do have curiosity, which often proves fatal.
So sometimes we try to innovate with a conscious mind, but most of the time it is a download. It comes from the big guy, a download or an upload.
The big nugget. Because this item of universal interest is so misunderstood and misconstrued, it took a special extended investigation to reduce it to anywhere near a rational level. The following rote, passed to me by a friend, is at least a beginning. Once it is absorbed, it will expand as it is contemplated.
So a rote is resonant or organized thought energy. It's a package of information which, when we go into these higher states of consciousness, is downloaded into our system, and over a period of time it unravels.
Love can't be taught, can't be bought. Love can't be learned. It is generated within the individual in response to an external stimulus. The individual has no control over this generation. Once initiated, it may be layered over or sublimated, but never destroyed. Physical death has no effect upon the reality of its existence. As such, energy is neither dependent upon nor a part of time space.
So again, love is a primordial force. It can never be destroyed and it cannot be created. It comes from the core self, right? Sometimes it may get covered up, but it can never get destroyed.
It is a radiation that cannot be grasped and held on to. Instead, it is perceived, experienced as it passes through the individual, who adds to it that additional portion which has been generated by this passing. The energy is thereby enhanced, and the individual becomes a constant contributor and recipient thereof.
So again, when we are in love, right, during puberty, that is a time when we are totally connected. Everything seems beautiful. everything is wonderful. Whatever our lover says, we can manifest. We can just go and do it, right? Where is that energy coming from? It's coming from the core self. You are in a state of mind which is in bliss. Over here, he says that again, we cannot grasp it, where it comes from, how it comes, how it happens. Very difficult to really understand it. But whenever we are touched by it, we are enhanced by it, and we add our flavor to that energy all the time. So in Far Journeys, we read about the harvesting of losh. Losh gets created, according to the Robert Monroe books, when there is love involved. Whenever someone is in love, a lot of losh gets generated. That is the basic energy with which the world really operates.
It is a radiation that cannot be grasped and held onto. Instead, it is perceived, experienced as it passes through the individual, who adds to it that additional portion which has been generated by this passing. The energy is thereby re-enhanced, and the individual becomes a constant contributor and recipient thereof. With the heavy emphasis on sexual arousal and the myth of romance, it is no surprise that so many claim to experience what we may call the big L in their relationships. Not so. The only way you can obtain it is through shared life experience, and even then there is no guarantee. On the other hand, it will grow on you. You don't have to work at it, despite what the book says. Time is not a vital factor. The deeper, more intense the shared experience, the less time it takes.
So basically, when we have a deep connection, when we have a deep relationship with someone, that means we are totally resonating with someone else. That is when love really starts to flow, right? And it is not, love is a selfless thing. It is not something that you're asking for someone, something from the other person and giving someone the other person, then it becomes a transaction. This is something that we read in Celestine Prophecy also. We talked about the control dramas. If love is operating from a control drama's perspective, then it is not what he is talking about here. The big love comes when we are willingly giving something to someone and the other person is willingly giving it back to us or giving something back to us. That is when both the fields grow. But if it is a control drama and we are wanting to grab something from the other person, then it is not what he's talking about here, the big L.
Other attractions are not necessarily destructive or valueless, but they do fall into another category. The difference is that the big L is indestructible and eternal, and never dependent on local habits and customs. Friendship, for example, might be construed as a shadow of the big L, or at least a kissing cousin.
So again, what is he saying? The big love is indestructible. I mean, today, if you see the love of a mother for the child, it is indestructible, right? The child, in most cases, the child may be doing anything, but the mother's love remains constant.
The greatest problem lies in misidentification. We become entrapped into believing we have found the big L, often with disastrous results when the ideal is not adhered to by the loved one.
So again, falsely feeling that we are in the big love, right? In most cases, when people get I should say rise in love, they're actually falling in love, right? For some time, there's infatuation and everything is okay. And then slowly, if the loved one doesn't do as we say, we start getting upset. Okay. And that's when the control drama starts. We start wanting to draw energy from the other person, wanting the other person to follow our lead, not giving freedom to that other person. And then there is problems in every relationship, in those relationships.
The most consistent and visible facet of the big L is probably mother love. It meets the test admirably, although it often gets heavily layered with protocol.
So again, mother's love is one of the primordial kinds of love which are there. Although, of course, it can get squeezed at times.
Men find the big L in other men and women in other women, usually as a result of profound experience over some time, although extended experience does not automatically evoke the big L. Yet, when it does happen, sometimes effortlessly and without conscious awareness, it is permanent in the full meaning of the word. If you work together, play together, live together, fight, suffer, laugh, and team together, the probability is increased.
So again, getting into that love state, that's why they say a family which eats together and prays together stays together. That's why shared activities, right? Doing things together becomes very, very important. Many times when we go into people's houses and there is a frequency, it's 11.2 on the Lecker antenna, it relates to heart energy. Many times we find in the houses that the heart energy is gone. And the first question that I will ask them, do you eat your meals together? Let me tell you, 99% of the time, the family is not sitting together and eating together. Of course, praying together is a big thing. Today, even if they eat together, it's enough, right? Most families don't pray together these days. I mean, at least in the houses that I have been going to.
The main characteristic of the big L is that it does not diminish with physical death and you cannot extinguish it during physical life. Out of necessity, propriety, or for reasons beyond your control, you may sublimate it, yet it will always be there, glowing quietly within you. Why the expression, till death do us part, became part of our culture is a mystery. Perhaps it was inserted so that the physical survivor would feel emotionally free to remarry and beget more offspring to further ensure the continuation of the species. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
So again, it is a misnomer that we lose our connection after death. The energy is always around us. And as we read previously, if you think of that person, you are totally connected with that person, right? So physical death is only a transition. It is not the end. Although we have been told that it is the end.
The big L is the core self at its finest distillation.
So when we are vibrating at the frequency of love, true love, we are deeply connected with our core self, right? Because the core self is love.
Reflecting on all this, I think that the source of the missing basic is now clear, the core self. But how do you really get to know you?
So the core self is what you really are, right? And that's what the game of all the Monroe programs is, to be able to allow us to know ourselves.
Chapter 7 Tour Guide. As the search for the missing basic continues, we as visitors and participants in the Earth life system might now assess and summarize what we have learned so that we may be in better condition to survey and then travel the road that lies ahead.
So what does this imply, right? If we can know what is coming ahead and we know what and where we are, then the road ahead automatically becomes easier.
Our different overview is beginning to firm up, but all the same, the question still arises, why do we bother? Why continue with this hard journey when we could simply relax into the comfort of an appropriate belief system?
So again, the belief system territories are focus level 24, 25, and 26, where you can go and join an environment that you wish to, right? So where he is clearly saying, why do we continue on this hard journey when we could just go and enjoy it and be ourselves in the belief system territory?
We shall see later if the journey brings its own reward. In the meantime, let's have a look at where we are and at what our new and different overview reveals. The Earth life system, for all its shortcomings, is an exquisite teaching machine. It brings into focus for each of us, in our own way, a wide understanding of energy and the control and manipulation thereof that is generally unavailable except through a structured environment such as time-space. The Earth's life system is a set of tools, and we learn to use them.
So again, as I mentioned before, the Earth life system is a very, very, it's a beautiful, you could say a school or a college. This is where we get maximum experience in the shortest possible way, right? Again, time and space are squeezed, right? So the point here is, this is a place of learning. It's a place of growth. We learn by experience, and the Earth life system is a fantastic place to actually go through experiences.
In the Earth life system, we learn measurement. It is a polarized environment where comparatives are possible. We learn what are hot or cold, strong or weak, hungry or full, fast or slow, sad or glad, male or female, friend or foe, love or hate. The list goes on.
So we learn measurement. Measurement also can mean comparison. Against this, what is this? Against that, what is that? Right? So we can understand and start to differentiate between various things through the process of analysis and measurement.
We learn energy applications in a useful manner in many different forms. We operate physical energy both inside and outside our bodies. We experience and direct mental energy without ever truly knowing the details of how, because it comes so naturally to us.
So again, using mental energy, right? This is what they say, nazar lag gaya. So anytime you are having a thought, it has an effect. So watching our thoughts, which side of the grid are we operating from, right? When we are thinking, also becomes very important.
Through application of our human mind, we learn to create in ways and methods we didn't know existed because they are unique to time, space, and some are peculiar to and available only in this system and are not available elsewhere. These provide avenues of expression beyond description.
So again, we operate in time-space continuum. This time-space continuum doesn't exist elsewhere. And because of that, we are able to create various ways and means how to deal with whatever we are experiencing. Right. Now, having said that, basically the idea is to transcend time and space. That is when we can become our true self, because the true self does not operate in the time-space continuum.
Similarly, we learn appreciation of beauty. We find it in a lowly rock, a stately fir tree, a thunderstorm, ocean surf, a cloud-tinted sunset, a soft-spoken word, a sweeping skyscraper tower, a musical chord, the leap of a leopard. Again, the list is endless. Most of all, we find it in what other humans think and do, in their and our emotions, and we learn to laugh and have fun.
So again, what did we say right in the beginning? The best way to shift from the left side of the grid to the right side of the grid is through appreciation. Whenever we get into appreciation, we learn to really have fun, to enjoy ourselves, to really be our true self, make that inner connection.
Every single thing we learn, no matter how small or seemingly inconsequential, is of immense value. There, beyond time space.
So as I said, this is a very beautiful place to learn, and people who go through the earth life existence are revered over there. Right? It's like someone who has graduated from IIM or IIT. They are revered, right? They immediately get a job. Why? Because they have some kind of an experience that normal people don't have. So, likewise, anyone graduating from the earth life system is revered there, right? Where which is not exist, not the place where which is not existing in the time space continuum.
This is fully understood only when you encounter a graduate of the Earth life system process of being human who resides in the there. You then know, not just believe, that it is worth any price to be human and to learn.
So as I said that graduates of the earth life system are revered over there. We have one more page to go.
Now, to effect the greatest change in your overview and to provide a simple and understandable purpose for being here in the Earth life system, we need to be specific. This involves looking closely at something unique to the human mind, our thinking process. Current concepts have it that aside from our animal driven activity, our thinking is divided into two basic categories which we identify as left brain and right brain. Bear in mind that this identification is only symbolic and the separation is nowhere near as distinct as left right would seem to indicate.
Okay, so we've got two parts of the brain. Most of you have done the excursion workshop. We talk about it, the left side and the right side of the brain. The left side performs certain functions, the right side performs others functions, but it does not mean that either side cannot perform all the functions.
Current concepts have it that aside from our animal driven activity, our thinking is divided into two basic categories which we identify as left brain and right brain. Bear in mind that this identification is only symbolic and the separation is nowhere near as distinct as left right would seem to indicate. Our left brain process is the part of us that gets things done. It is the intellectual, analytical area of function. Here lie our mathematical and speech centers, our logical reasoning, our scientific method, our organizational talents and teaching skills, and much more. It is our left brain activity that makes us different from animals. It is the source of our can do optimism.
So the practical part, the materialistic part, right? The place where we do things, we get things done.
Our right brain is opposite. From this come our perception of form and space, beauty, intuition, emotions, plus everything else the left brain cannot understand or categorize, including love, friendship, inspiration, etc. The right brain is horrified at the idea that a left brain formula can be produced to quantify and qualify love and friendship. That is right brain sacred territory. Paradoxically, our right brain is the generator of our feelings of negativity.
So again, the right brain deals with emotions, and most of the time we are in negative emotions. We are operating from the left side of the grid. So paying attention to where you're operating from is a very simple way to understand where we are going. And over here clearly says paradoxically, our right brain is the generator of our feelings of negativity. So we are constantly thinking of negative things, right? And that naturally comes from the right brain. We can stop here today.